I loved it.
I'm good. Good morning to you guys. What's going on?
Jesse, I think you got him to show more fire than he's shown the entire season.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess so.
Friday, what was the guy's name? Alfonso Ortiz?
Roberto
Ortiz. Sorry, it's Alfonso Marquez.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Okay. He embarrassed himself. He was a horrifically bad umpire. Craig is yelling from the dugout, "That's low." How about coming out of the dugout and showing some fire that maybe it injects some adrenaline into the 41,000 people in there lining their pockets, and maybe said adrenaline carries over to your lousy-ass ball club. I loved what you said yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll give you a little background. If they had lost the game, I probably would have said it a little bit more delicately. You know what it's like in a press conference after a loss compared to a win. When you win, it's a little bit more casual, a little bit more laid back. And so, I use kind of that colorful language, hit it to the lake. But I think it's good to ask those questions even in wins because the manager isn't sort of defensive or thinking about other things. Like, you won, everything's cool in that moment at least. Hey, but look, you still have these offensive problems. Should he be cutting down his swing a little bit? These were really huge swings with the tying run at second base, and just kind of asking that offensive question we've all been wondering about this team. What's the problems? And with Morel, it does seem like some. But look, I wanted to get an answer from him. I didn't know which way he'd go. I thought he might say, yeah, he needs to see the situation and cut down. Or the other answer is that's not who he is. He's going to take big swings. We could be leading 2-1 if he makes contact after one of those. So I didn't ask the question knowing the answer. I asked it because I wanted to know what Craig thought. And, yeah, I used a little bit, different kind of language. If they had lost, I probably would have sort of toned it down instead of saying swing to the lake. But we got his answer. He's okay with those kind of big swings, even in a tight game like that. So that's okay. That's okay. I mean, I don't know why he sort of took offense to it, but I assume it's because I said swinging to the lake, which is maybe a little aggressive. I don't know.
Did you ask any follow-up questions, or did you get any looks from Counsell for the remainder of the press conference?
No, I did not get any looks. You guys know I've known the guy since he was a player, so I assume we're good. It was just nothing. I mean, those things happen. I mean, in fact, I guess that's one of the first tense moments in a presser this year, right? As they think about it. It's kind of unusual for a last-place team that wasn't expected to be this bad to only have a tense moment or two. There should be a lot of tense moments. Frankly, if this was New York or Philadelphia, there'd be many of them for a wholly underachieving team. This seemed like a very sort of, one that kind of came out of nowhere because, again, it came after a win. So we're just kind of, to me, it's almost like shooting the you-know-what after the game. You won. Hey, but what about earlier? Should he be taking those big swings? Like, I didn't think it would elicit that. I thought he might say, no, Jess, that's who he is. It's okay. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't think he'd get upset over it. But it is what it is. But there probably should be more tense moments for a last-place team. There haven't been many. You
going to Wrigley for this Brewers series?
Of course. Jed's going to talk today. Well, give me one that'll. Can I tick off the manager and the president back-to-back days? I mean, again, like that should be. It's the last presser before the trade deadline. Like, he's got to answer some tough questions today. So that's going to be the storyline later today at Wrigley.
So I listened to Carter yesterday on his interview in-game. He says nothing. I'm sure he's a nice man. I've never met him. He's absolutely nothing, which leads me to believe they're going to do very, very little at the deadline other than maybe sell, which I find offensive, Jesse, that through 4 years of Jet now, this team is in bad shape. You tell me why I should be optimistic about next year if they trade away a Tyone or they trade away some piece and don't get a lot back other than more for their minor league system.
It's turning out, guys, that trying to compete while rebuilding might end up backfiring on Jed. It's really difficult to incorporate young players as you're trying to compete. I mean, this is why, Pete Armstrong needs some runway. Michael Busch has come on strong, but most rookies need some runway, and Michael Busch might take a step back next year. You know what it's like. Progress isn't linear is the thing that Theo always said. So I agree with you. What does next year exactly look like as you incorporate maybe Owen Casey and Matt Shaw and maybe Cade Horton and Ballesteros, the catcher? Like, what are you exactly? Are you a young team? You're going to give these young players 500 at bats, or are you going to try to compete and stunt their growth? Like, this is the difficult needle he's trying to thread, competing and getting young players into the lineup.
So Jesse, does he?
I don't know. I don't know the answer, Cap. I don't know.
Does Jed get his contract extended? Does he go in as a lame duck? And if he is a lame duck fighting to keep his gig, does he make a deal that you're like, uh-oh, boy, he overpaid there? Like, how do you handle this if you're Ricketts?
Yeah, so first of all, I don't think he's going to get fired at the end of this year no matter what happens. How you handle it if you're Ricketts, I'm not going to pretend to know. We've never been in this situation since Jim Hendry, really. It's been a long time since he's needed to make that ultimate decision. Like Theo and Jed were making the decisions on the manager, but Tom has to make that ultimate decision. I don't know if he goes into it as a lame duck. I'm not sure. I think, to be honest, it goes back to that whole being comfortable at Wrigley. There's 38,000 there. Like, the farm system looks good according to rankings. I don't think Tom is looking to rock the boat. Eventually, though, failure has to lead to changes. So that's my answer to your question. His default position is not to make a big change unless he's eventually forced to. That's the only way I can read it right now, considering we have no history with Tom Ricketts and hiring and firing executives and all that stuff.
When you have back-to-back non-playoff appearances, though, Jesse, something has to give because, we talked this morning, sell, buy, or stand pat. It's big decisions for not just Jed and Carter, but also for Tom, exactly what direction you want to take this thing, because as is, not good enough.
Well, think about it. I mean, eliminate 2020. Come on, that's a joke of a season. So 19, 21, 22, 23, 24, that's 5 straight years. And in the middle of those 5 years, you decide to rebuild. Okay, well, since halfway through 21, we're still not any much closer other than a farm system that looks good on paper. And that's all it is right now is paper. So, yeah, I mean, if Tom is committed to winning and Jed, urgency, where's the urgency? You got to get moving here. Should you be bidding for Juan Soto? Of course. Should you have stayed in the Ohtani sweepstakes longer? Of course. Not saying you would have gotten them, but we know they bowed out, and they'll probably bow out on the Juan Soto situation. So that's where I don't know where this goes exactly. They didn't bottom out and lose 100 games a couple years in a row and give young players 500 at-bats. They tried to compete and rebuild, and that is a difficult task.
We'll take a quick time out. More with Jesse Rogers on the Cubs and any Sox news. That's all next on ESPN 1000.
With us here on the Kap and J.Hood Morning Show on ESPN 1000 and streaming on the ESPN Chicago app. Still to come at 9:18, we'll talk about the Bears with Courtney Cronin from Lake Forest. But, Jesse, the Cubs will take on the Brewers, and so I'll ask, why have the Brewers been so good to sustain themselves in first place all this long? What is it that the Brewers have that the Cubs don't?
They do everything well. They don't really have a major weakness. Now, they don't do everything well like the Phillies do, or maybe the Yankees or the Orioles. But within this division, they're the best team, and team is the key word there. They just do everything well. They don't have a ton of superstars. That goes against sort of our theory about the Cubs. Like, they need superstars. Well, I mean, I guess in some ways the Brewers do this year with Yelich and William Contreras, but they're not really built year to year with superstars. So the answer is, if you don't have superstars throughout your lineup, you better do everything well. They play defense, they run the bases. It's just all those little things that we'd like to see the Cubs do better. Milwaukee does. And then, of course, they a couple career year type of years like William Contreras is having. So, they don't have the best starting pitching. The Cubs' starting pitching is better, but seemingly every other part of the Brewers game is better than the Cubs. And it's hard. I've talked to scouts. They're like, I don't know why the Brewers are so good, but they are. So it's just what they do up there. Obviously, it's an organizational thing. It wasn't just Counsell or whatever the case may be. So you got to give them a lot of credit.
Jesse, in terms of what the vibe is over there at Wrigley, do you think they're waving the white flag on this season?
Yeah, I do. I was told 2 weeks ago they were indicating they were going to be sellers and then put a little pause on it when they had that good road trip. But I think this weekend is kind of telling again. You're still well below 500 or a few games at least. And in the wild card race, you have all these other teams kind of surging like the Diamondbacks are now. So I think they're back to indicating to teams that they're sellers. I know there's a lot of scouts looking at the relievers, Hector Neris and Mark Leiter Jr. at the top of that list. Though, I mean, the Cubs would love to be able to trade Hector Neris. He has a team option that turns into a player option if he gets to 60 appearances. He's on pace for about 57, so that could complicate a trade. I don't think anybody wants to pay him $9 million next year, but the Cubs would love to move Neris, maybe Leiter if they get a good deal back. Who knows? Merriweather's due back. Maybe he gives teams 2 weeks, and they like him. Could they trade a Tyon or something like that? I think it's possible. Could they trade a position player under contract? I think anything's possible. When you're wholly underachieving like this, you have to change your tactics a little bit. And certainly if they could move Bellinger, I think they would as well. So there are some names. But definitely scouts have been in the stands for those relievers.
Any Sachs news?
Well, it's going to heat up. I mean, Crochet's start tomorrow will be interesting for scouts. I mean, normally you kind of know what you're getting, but I think people do want to see what he looks like coming out of the break. He's pitched, 3 innings, including the All-Star game, in 10 days or so, to pitch the 2 innings in his final start a week ago Friday, 1 inning in the All-Star game now tomorrow. So let's see how he looks. I think he's built different. Everyone's so worried about his innings. Like, not every pitcher's the same. This guy's big and strong. He's gone from 12 innings to 107, and it hasn't slowed down yet. Now, maybe there's a number that he will, but the rumors are absolutely going to heat up starting this week. There's no doubt. It has been quiet. There's true. It has been quiet. All-Star break was quieter than I thought in terms of trade talk. It will start to pick up, and the big boys are interested. The Yankees, the Dodgers, the Orioles, all those contending teams are lining up for teams like the White Sox and to see what they can get.
Here's my theory. My theory about Garrett Crochet is that this whole rotation was set up so that way the Sox would never see Crochet pitch at guaranteed rate field again as a White Sox, because he's pitching on Tuesday. His next outing would be Sunday against Seattle at home. Do you have a feeling that by the time we get to Sunday that he will be gone?
I have a feeling he may not make that start. I don't know if he'll be gone. And I'm just speculating. I have no inside info. Sox aren't telling me when they're starting him and when they're not. But I have a feeling after tomorrow they're really going to ramp it down. I can't say for sure, J-Hood. They haven't forecasted their plans, but or even a timing of a trade is always hard to forecast. But I did tell you guys a few weeks ago I didn't think Getz would wait until the final 48 hours to make all his moves. There's just too many moving parts. So I do think we could see we're in that window where we could see a trade, and certainly after his next start, there's a possibility. So I can't say about Sunday, J-Hood, but I do think after tomorrow, scouts will have seen everything they need to see.
Jesse, I think I speak for everybody how disappointed we are in the state of Chicago baseball. But the Sox entered the season knowing they were going to be awful. The Cubs, I have no idea where that thing is headed. Is it as bad as it looks?
Come on, Jesse.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why Jed's going to have to answer some tough questions today and throughout the second half if this thing doesn't turn around. So, the path. I would say at the beginning of this year we saw a light at the end of the tunnel, but that was assuming they built off their 83 wins last year. Now you're like, where are they exactly? I think that's a fair question to ask the way things have gone this year.
Well, I tell you, Jesse, you always find your way into the news, don't you? There's a little Sports Illustrated, a little awful announcing. It's amazing. Every year, there's always something.
That's not the goal. That is not the goal. you do not want to be the focus. And I assumed it was an innocent enough question. Use a little colorful language, hit it to the lake. I didn't think it would get that response. But anyway, it is what it is.
Jesse.
Did you get a call from Kirchton or someone in Bristol about this?
I did hear from some people out of Bristol, not Kirchton, but other people. My boy Passon loved it. He's all over
Of course he Of course he did.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, so. Anyway, we'll see.
Fire up Jed today.
I'll leave that to someone else. I inadvertently ran into it yesterday. No, I'm kidding. I will ask the proper questions that the situation calls for, right? And the situation isn't good right now with the Cubs.
Jesse, here's the question.
Do you feel like your job's on the line?
A, that's a great one.
Mm-hmm.
And B, If you guys don't do anything at this deadline other than subtract, why should the fan base be invested that this team can be good next year?
Yeah, and Sylvie wants me to ask about Counsell's role. Is he getting everything out of Counsell that he expected? Yeah, these are all good questions, and I think Jed gets it. Like, you know this. Jed understands where they are in the world here, in the baseball world in Chicago. It's not very good, and he has to answer those questions, no doubt.
Jesse, as always, we appreciate the time.
Okay, boys. Have a great week. Talk to you later.
It's a bad take, Jeff.